President last week to your home state, we raised this issue again on the floor of the Senate. We have U.S. attorneys as well as U.S. marshals who are being held up by one senator. It is, I guess, appropriate to ask witnesses about defunding the police. This is a parallel move. This is actually removing or failing to appoint law enforcement officials who are critical to safety in our communities. And I believe it's an unwise approach, and I'll continue to argue that. I believe that Senator Lee is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Clarke, for being here. In 1994, in a case called Johnson versus Miller, the voting rights section was sanctioned almost $600,000 for collusive misconduct. The district court noted that the ACLU was, quote, in constant contact with the DOJ line attorneys and declared it's obvious from a review of the materials that the ACLU attorney's relationship with the DOJ voting section was informal and familiar. The dynamics were that of peers working together, not of an advocate submitting proposals to a higher authority. The court further noted, quote, the considerable influence of the ACLU advocacy group on voting rights decisions of the United States Attorney General is an embarrassment, and it's surprising that the Department of Justice was so blind to this impropriety, especially in a role as sensitive as that of preserving the fundamental right to vote. I wish I could say that this type of collusive behavior came to an abrupt halt with the Johnson decision. It should have, but it didn't. In 2010, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights called out the voting rights section for, quote, inappropriately selective enforcement of the laws, harassment of dissenting employees, and alliances with outside interest groups at odds with the rule of law. Additionally, just in recent months, this committee has heard testimony from former voting section attorneys describing a long history of collusive behavior. The whole reason I bring this up, Ms. Clarke, is to demonstrate that there is a troubling pattern of behavior that's been exhibited by the voting section in the past. And so, you know, when something like that happens, it's one of many instances where the Freedom of Information Act is necessary, and it's certainly an example of why it exists. It exists, among other things, to ensure that this kind of reprehensible behavior isn't occurring, and that when it does occur, people can find out about it. So can I just ask you, is it appropriate for attorneys at the Department of Justice to collude or conspire with outside interest groups when deciding to bring cases against individuals, organizations, or states?
Thank you, Senator. Collusion and conspiring certainly sounds inappropriate. What I can assure you, Senator, is that we carry out our work in the department, in the Civil Rights Division, independently and with a focus on the facts and applying the law to the facts.
I appreciate that, and I think that's the kind of thing that all Americans should be able to expect from the department, and where that's the case, it'll be borne out. It's one of the reasons why it's concerning to me. It's come to my attention that at the end of August of last year, the Secretary of State of the state of Georgia submitted a FOIA request, quote, seeking communication discussing Georgia's new election law or the Biden administration's lawsuit against the law between 62 identified outside individuals, entities, members of Congress, and their staffs. Despite federal law requiring that the Department of Justice respond to FOIA requests within 20 business days, absent unusual circumstances that, to my knowledge, haven't been invoked here, it appears that Georgia has yet to receive any of the requested information. Ms. Clarke, has the Department of Justice released any of the requested information to the Georgia Secretary of State?
Thank you, Senator. We don't handle the Freedom of Information Act requests that get directed to the department. I'm happy to take the question back and direct it to the appropriate officials.
That'd be great. I'd appreciate that. And if you could take that up with them, that'd be wonderful. So in the interest of transparency, are you committing to me that you'll make sure that this FOIA request is granted and that the appropriate documents are submitted to the Georgia Secretary of State?
Well, we don't handle those requests in the Civil Rights Division, so I can't speak for the officials that process them.
But it is your division, and I hope and expect that you will want those requests handled appropriately.
Yes.
And you know, unfortunately, the Georgia Secretary of State's FOIA request is not the only one that's gone unanswered. We're aware of numerous FOIA requests submitted, for example, by the American Accountability Foundation relating to the Biden executive order requiring federal agencies to develop voter registration plans. Those requests were filed in October, and they still haven't been answered. Will you commit to making sure that those requests are answered as soon as possible?
I can't speak for the component within the department that handles FOIA requests, but I'm happy to take the question back, Senator.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing that. You know, the Freedom of Information Act is a tool. It's a tool that helps keep our agencies honest. And if this kind of behavior continues, the blatant disregard for requests for public information, we're going to have to ask ourselves what exactly is happening within the voting session that's being hidden and that people in the section are trying to hide. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lee. Senator Blumenthal.